What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm bringing you the best augments to use for each of the vocations here in Dragon's Dogma 2. I'm just going to go over the Arisen, so just for you guys, because that way we have the Trickster, the Mystic Spearhand, the Warfare, and the Magick Archer. That way I can cover all vocations, and that way you guys can pick your augments with ease to have the best class setup for each of the vocations. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. Alright, so how we're going to do this is I'm going to go over the vocations, and I'm going to start as the fighter and then just go down the list from the vocations list from the Vocations Guild and just show you guys each of the augments for each of the classes, so that way you guys can have an idea of which ones we are going to be using for each of the vocations. So starting off, we are going to go over the fighter vocation. We're going to talk to this guy and the Pawn Guild, and then we have the fighter. So first things first, the warfare augments Zeal and Dynamism are going to be the two augments that you want to try and get as soon as possible. Warfare you'll get later on in the game, but once you unlock these two augments, you are going to have these two augments on your vocations at all times. The first one, Zeal, you reduce stamina by performing a skill, and then Dynamism that decreases the weight threshold for your sprint speed. And considering Dragon's Dogma 2, you are traveling everywhere in this place. You have limited amount of fairy stones, so you'll be on foot a lot of times. So having Dynamism and Zeal are going to be your two main augments for pretty much all of the vocations here, if not all of them. So augment setups, you have 6 augments that you can have on each of the vocations. So we already have the 2, like I said, Zeal and Dynamism, and then for the fighter, we're going to use Metal, Provocation, Zeal, Dynamism, Vitality, and Constancy. So Zeal and Dynamism, as I already told you, why we want those as our 2 augments, but we want Metal from Fighter. It's one of the first ones you get as unlocking the fighter, because it increases your physical defense, and a fighter you are going to be up in the enemy's face, pretty much being like a paladin, so having more defense is nice. And then the next one, Provocation, increases the likelihood of being targeted by foes, and as we are a fighter, we want to pull aggro from the enemy so that way they are not targeting our squishies such as the Archer, the Mage, and the Sorcerers. Then we also have Vitality, which is unlocked from the Warrior class, and Vitality will increase our maximum health, which is great for being a Paladin type kind of build, because we are going to be headfirst into the enemy, so of course having more health is more useful. And lastly, I have Constancy, which is unlocked from the Sorcerer vocation. This augments your knockdown resistance, and of course being a fighter and being close to enemies, you're going to get probably hit by enemies and try to get knocked down, so having increased knockdown resistance is going to be very useful as a fighter. And next up we have the Archer augment setup. Of course we have Zeal and Dynamism, and then we also have Subtlety, Athleticism, Lethality, and Dominance. So Subtlety comes from the Thief, and that allows us to be targeted less by enemies, so we can pick them off from range without pulling so much aggro. Then Athleticism comes from the Mystic Spearhand vocation, and that allows us to consume less stamina while dashing and sprinting, so if enemies do catch on to us, we don't consume as much stamina. Then next up we have Lethality, which comes from the Archer, and that allows us to have increased damage by targeting enemies' weak spots, which we are going to be doing all the time as an Archer. And then lastly, Dominance, that comes from Warrior, which allows us to contribute to the knockdown power for the Archer. And next up we have the Mage augment setup. Of course we have the 2, and then we are using Sustainment, Athleticism, Ascendancy, and Beatitude. So Sustainment and Ascendancy come from Magick Archer, and that'll buff our pawns, the offensive and the defensive stats. Of course Athleticism for the Mystic Spearhand, that way we can consume less stamina. And then lastly we have Beatitude, which comes from Mage, so we can heal more with our spell. And for the Thief setup, we have the Zeal and Dynamism, and then I'm using Endurance, Athleticism, Lethality, and Dominance. Endurance allows us to have more stamina, and stamina is the name of the game here in Dragon's Dogma 2, so especially as a Thief, that'll be very helpful. We have Lethality because we are always going to be targeting weak spots on enemies. We have Dominance from Warrior because we are going to try and knock down to get those criticals as much as possible. And of course, athleticism from Mystic Spearhand, because that way we can get away from enemies without consuming a bunch of stamina. And for the warrior, of course, I'm using the 2, and then provocation, constancy, lethality, and dominance. Provocation, because that way we can pull aggro onto ourselves. Constancy to increase our knockdown resistance. Lethality, because that way we hit those weak spots when we get those unga bunga damage spots. And then of course dominance from the warrior itself to get that increased knockdown power. And then next up we have the sorcerer. So of course zeal and dynamism, and then we have asperity, constancy, subtlety, and catalysis. So asperity allows us to inflict debilitations onto enemies a lot faster, and constancy of course increases our knockdown resistance, so just in case the enemies try to come up and try to knock us down, we'll have increased knockdown resistance. Of course, subtlety from the thief, that way we are not targeted as much from enemies. And then lastly is catalysis, which allows us to increase our damage dealt when we exploit a target's elemental weakness, which of course we will be doing as a sorcerer all the time. And next up we have the Mystic Spearhand, of course, zeal and dynamism like always, and then we are using lethality, dominance, endurance, and metal. Lethality, of course, we're always going to go with those weak spots, so we want to increase damage on that. Dominance from warrior, that way we can knock down our bigger targets with ease. Endurance, that way we have increased stamina, because the ultimate ability, Wild Fury, consumes stamina, so having more stamina to just pump out damage is always nice. And of course metal from fighter, because we still are a hybrid class, but we are going to be up in the enemy's face, so having some more increased physical defense is always nice. And next up we have the Magick Archer setup, of course zeal and dynamism, and then we have lethality, dominance, athleticism, and subtlety. Of course, lethality, we are always getting weak spots as a Magick Archer, especially with the OP skills that this vocation has. Dominance, of course, that way we can knock down bigger targets. Athleticism, that way we can get away without consuming a bunch of stamina. And of course, subtlety from the thief, that way our enemies are not targeting us as much. Now moving on to the Trickster. The Trickster is a weird vocation in Dragon's Dogma 2, so it's more of a just like an illusionist build, and you're just kind of helping out your pawns. So this is the setup that I would like to run. Of course you have your zeal and dynamism, and then fugacity, which is from Trickster, is more of a quality of life augment, so that way it reduces you getting attacked while on an ox cart or while camping. So just kind of a quality of life augment to throw in there. And then ascendancy and sustainment, both from Magick Archer, buff your pawns, so they buff your defense and their offense, so why not use that with the Trickster. And then lastly I have exaltation, that way it increases our stamina recovery speed, and you get that from leveling up the Mage. Now lastly we have the Warfare. Now this is pretty much an all-rounder build, just meant for combat in general. So of course zeal and dynamism that come from Warfare, lethality, dominance, constancy, and athleticism, so that way we can target our weak spots, get the knockdowns, knockdown resist, and then of course athleticism, reducing our stamina while we are dashing in the middle of combat or out in the world. So this is just kind of like an all-rounder build. Now with Warfare, you can mix and match pretty much anything depending on what you're doing. You can be support, you can be just pure damage, you can do a little bit of everything with Warfare. So I am just giving you guys a simple all-rounder setup with the Warfare. And there you have it, guys. This is my all of augments for all vocations guide here in Dragon's Dogma 2. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. It took a lot of research and putting together and making sure the augments complemented each vocation. So if you guys enjoyed that, and if you want more Dragon's Dogma 2 content, don't forget to drop a like and consider subscribing to the Lost Days Gaming channel. And also join our Discord where we talk about all kinds of games and I provide updates and everything. So the link to our Discord will be down in the description below. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Deuces.